Welcome to Bridging the Gap to Connections, the talk show, where we begin by sharing your stories and spotlighting your shine. Hello, and welcome back to Bridging the Gap to Connections. I'm Darla Williams here, and today we have on the show Jacquelyn Roberson. Who is Jacquelyn? Jacquelyn is a family-orientated individual who lives on the positive side of life. Through life experiences that has shaped her, she has learned who people really are. Today on the episode, we would like to dive into a discussion on how we are doing when we lose a loved one. Also, what happens during grief. So today, Jacquelyn, can you tell me a little bit about what's going on in your world so that we can start diving into this topic to help others to learn how to navigate?
Certainly. So some of what's going on in my world is a lot of overlap between having lost a close friend and um, taking care of family members who might need to potentially go into the hospital or uh, make being trying to make sure that everybody is taken care of while still also making sure to take care of myself, which is the most important thing. But we sometimes lose sight of that while we're trying to be there for those that we love.
Right. So when we're navigating such emotions, so we're dealing with the emotions of what's going on in life, we get overwhelmed. How can we pause and take a minute when we're dealing with something so overwhelming?
Sometimes if you're with the person that you're helping assist with, you might be able to say, let me just take a minute and walk outside and compose myself and take a couple of breaths. And then I will be right back and we can tackle this matter in a better manner so that it's conducive to both of us. Another thing is that if you want to taking a walk to clear your mind, or if you sometimes taking a bath or a shower and just letting the warm water can to calms you down as well and feels like it washes away your stress. And let's see, if working out, I know for me, I work out and it has really helped my stress levels. And I usually work out in the mornings and that helps me it sets the tone for the day and it allows for me to be my best self for other people.
That is beautiful. I love how you have so many different options that people can choose from. So today's subject is being over grief. Grief can come at any given moment and it can show up in waves. So if we're focusing on life and we've got a situation that has come in and we just lost somebody we absolutely love, how would you go about explaining to them that it's okay to take time when they're feeling so overwhelmed?
I think the first step is that you have to give yourself permission to not be okay, to cry, scream, yell, yell, punch a pillow. Um, I don't encourage that, but sometimes it happens and you absolutely just pillow more than a wall or something. Um, but also just letting the tears come when they come. Don't try to stop them. And because tears are a way of letting of your body releasing the stress. And it doesn't mean that in some ways tears just show how deeply you love that person and how deeply you care for them. And it can happen right away or it can happen years down the road. And it's just um so my uncle unexpectedly passed away a while ago. But even to this day, sometimes like I catch myself, um, some random memory will pop up in my head, or I smell his cologne just randomly, or I hear a song, or just something, and it just makes my heart ache a little bit. But I also know like it's okay. I know he's in a better place, and I just kind of tell him like, I love you, I miss you, I wish you were still here. Um, I'm getting choked up talking about that even now. Um, so there's no timeline for grief. Absolutely none. And it's going to go on pretty much for the duration of your life. And that's okay. And I think that people need to really understand that and hear that, not only from themselves, excuse me, but also from their loved one. Because sometimes other people, when it first happens, they can be, call me, text me, I'm here for you. But then as time goes on, life gets busy and they're maybe not as there as much. But it's still important to reach out to those that knew that person or someone that you were very close to that is just like, hey, I'm having a tough day. I miss so and so. I thought about him or her today. I saw a butterfly. I saw a cardinal. I saw something. And it just reminded me so much of that person. And my heart's aching a little bit today. And that's when the other person has the opportunity to say, hey, it's okay. It's still, you just love that person that much. Why don't you tell me some memories about them? Like, let's talk about that person and bring a little bit of joy from the sadness and the grief.
I love to tell people when they're going through grief, the only reason you're feeling so overwhelmed is because you have so much love to give to someone that is no longer present to give the love to. So, what
I
is
love
the important thing to do in that moment is give the love back to yourself. Because when our loved ones leave us and they go on to the next world, to heaven, to however you see, the energies and as it flows, wherever that goes for your understanding, what has to happen is you need to understand that there is a cord between you and someone else. And in that cord and that connection after death is severed. And it was an unexpected severance to you for that individual. And when you're sitting in that space, you have all of this to give, but nowhere for it to go. So you have to remember to turn it back around and give it back to yourself, because that is your love. That is your love for those who have now moved on, who are still watching over you, that are still loving you, that are still caring for you, but they're doing it in a different facet. They're now loving you from a visual and an above opportunity, and omnipresent. So every time you think of them, who knows? We don't know because we can't see on the other side of the veil.
exactly.
Maybe, just maybe, the moment you thought of them was because they came and visited you again.
Absolutely.
And
And
I
I also
really
think
believe
that
that.
they're always with us, even though we can't see them, they're always with us. And so in some ways, maybe like, I know it might sound silly, but when you're wanting to give them a hug, just give the air a hug. Or give yourself
So
a hug.
give yourself a hug because you need comforting. Give
Yeah.
yourself the hug because you need to be comforted because that person came with comfort. That person came with security. That
Mhm.
person came with love.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
when we take and embrace ourselves for just a moment, then we're actually receiving what we needed the whole time.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Uh, I know that it is such a tough subject to talk about grief. A lot of times, grief comes in unexpectedly, and that is the reason it becomes so overwhelming. How do we lose someone we love? What do we do the minute it happens? Well, I'm going to tell you, when it comes down to grief, the best thing you can do is find a support group. Find someone or a group of people who are already going through something too, because when you show up for them and they show up for you, you're both able to actually begin. You can probably find those in your local chamber of commerce if you don't know where to go, your local church, different people in the resources in the community, and different things like that, because we have to be able to find others to connect with that are going to understand, that are like-minded. We should never suffer any of these things alone. What do you think?
It,
What do you
and
think,
to build
Jacquelyn?
on that, is that humans are naturally very social creatures. And so when we no longer have that socialness, so to say, then we lose a part of ourselves even unintentionally. And so reaching out to others and having them reach out to us build that bond, not only of just going through the grief, but also perhaps you might meet a friend. You might meet the next person that's going to impact your life that you, you had no idea until you took the first step to go to a support group or a church or, wherever.
I look at life probably different than a lot of people. And the reason I say that is because I learned very early life and death is inevitable. As a little girl, I had a friend at 3 years old who had MS. By the time I was 11, he had passed away. He was my best friend. And being children, losing a child friend, it's very overwhelming. So I had to realize, because one day when he and I were talking when I was very young, because he was a few years older than me, he'd ride down on his skateboard, strapped onto that board, coming along, and because he had MS, he couldn't use his legs. He needed to get around. He was a kid wanting to get out there. I was 3, he was 11, and he didn't have anybody else in the neighborhood who would talk to him. So he'd always roll up on the side of the fence where I was playing on the other side, and he'd be like, "What are you doing today?" And I'd be like, "I'm planting." And one of the days that I will never forget, I was sitting there planting seeds. Well, in my opinion, at 3 years old, finding rocks, little rocks, were my seeds. And I was digging the hole with the spoon. I was sticking the rocks in the ground. And he was just sitting there going, you know, that's something we should all be doing, is planting seeds so they can grow. That's something we should all be doing. And
And I love that so much.
he told me, now mind you, when those are who know that they're going, they seem to have wisdom beyond their years. Now he was an 11-year-old individual with MS, and I was 3 years old. And he would tell me that he was very sick, that he didn't know how long he had, but he wanted to make every day fun and exciting. And he didn't want me to ever think that anything was bad. Well, he took that analogy of me planting the seeds in the ground, and he says, everything is a plant, including us. We all start off as a little seed, and then we begin to grow. And as we are growing, and I think the analogy of the flower is perfect because of your background. We have this flower, and as that flower is growing, it's going to look a little off because it's just greenery. And then all of a sudden something sprouts and then the flower begins to bud. And this is our younger development years. Everything's the bud. But then eventually it flourishes and it's so beautiful. And that's us in our perfect plan, doing all the things we're meant to do. But in the end, everything withers and fades away. So when I was planting the rocks in the ground, calling them seeds, he explained to me that there may be a time that things will fade away. And I was only 3 years old. And getting that understanding as a 3-year-old child, it helped me to understand that everything has its season. Everything has a reason. And all those things come together on perfect timing. There, even if it is unexpected and you don't know the precise moment that someone else is going to vacate our life, we have the perfect analogy when we stop and look at a plant. That plant is going to be beautiful. We're going to enjoy every phase of that flower. So I recommend to people, anytime I hear someone who's lost someone that they love, go plant a flower and allow them to grow once again.
And following up with that, it's so important too that not only plant your flower, but plant your flower in soil that is rich and soil that is supporting and loving and joyful. And then when the rain comes, because the rain is going to come, but let the rain be nourishing for that flower. And so let your grief come, but remember that person. Be joyful for that person, that person is no longer in pain, suffering, and they're in a better place. So I love the flower analogy. And I'm so glad you did that. And so also, towards the end when you were saying that everything washes away,
everything fades. They all fade.
I'm a Christian. And so in the Bible, when God says that death to death, into the earth you will come back. And it's so true. This is not our permanent world. And there have been many instances and many examples of just that. There's angels that have came to visit people. There are experiences that people have had that they can't explain, like an overwhelming peace comes over them, that they're like, it can only be from God. It can only be from like this otherworldly shore. And so I think that's very important to keep in mind as you go through this grief journey, is to plant yourself in very good soil and just let it nourish you. And then you were talking about how there's seasons and reasons, and also that's very true. There's always a reason, a season, and a lifetime for things. And sometimes we can't understand it when we go through it, but looking back on it, we can be like, you know what? Had I not gone through what I went through, I would not be the person that I am today. And sometimes it can seem like the hardest thing in the world when you're going through it. And you're like, why me? I don't deserve this. I don't understand it. But it's setting you up for perhaps, much like your story, where you are now helping others through telling your story. Maybe perhaps my story can help others as well. And John's story can help, everyone's story can help someone, whether they realize it or not.
I agree with that 100%. Everyone has a situation and a circumstance that we go through. Good, bad, and indifferent. We all have stories. Those stories are what is a series of events that allow us to actually begin formulating who we are. As we go through our experience in life, what actually happens is we're now getting a basis of how to connect with other individuals. Every single one of us were born and fashioned with a plan and a purpose. Being a Christian, you understand that we were formed and knitted in the womb, and that we have the opportunity to be given the gift of having a precise purpose. From the foundations of creation, God created man and woman. And in that, he made us in his likeness. And in that likeness, what does he do? He gives us all a perfect plan. Each one of us has a specific thing written into the heart. All mankind has a specific plan, a blueprint that is written into our hearts. And if we go and do the things that fill us with joy from our heart, then we're going to probably land on the path in which we were created to be. So what do we need to do is we need to begin understanding, who am I? And when we go through these hardships and these sufferings in life, sometimes it separates us from who we are. It separates us from our understanding. And this is why grief can become so overwhelming. Grief can come in like a thief in the night and steal away our joy. But if we sit with it long enough and we sit with grief, we find out that it's really just sadness. When we get sad and we're feeling so sad, what are we doing? We're literally finding ourselves in that place where we are alone. We're lost. We're scared and we're confused. How do we begin getting our emotions back in place? By using our words, by sharing with somebody else, by making sure that we're engaging with somebody who's actually listening, who wants to know what's going on with us. If we're going to the wrong people and they don't understand, or they're going through their own mess at the time, they may not be able to meet us where we're at. Sometimes we have to look outside of our normal group to find the resources that are necessary for us when we're going through these things. And that brought me, when we were talking a few minutes ago about the fading away and the passing away of things in our life, it brought me to the scripture when you mentioned that you're a Christian. It's in Ecclesiastes 3. One of the best scriptures that was ever written for us so that we could understand these moments. It says, "To everything there is a season, a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away the stones and a time to gather the stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit hath he who worketh in the wherein he laboreth?" I have seen the travail of God, let me repeat that. I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. He hath made everything beautiful in its time. He has set the world in their hearts, so no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. I know that there is no good in them, but for man to rejoice and to do good in his life. and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of his labor. It is a gift of God. I know that whoever God doeth, it shall be for ever. Nothing can be put to it or anything taken from it. And God doeth it. The man should fear before him. That which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been. And God requireth that which is part. And moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment. The wickedness was there, and the place of righteousness, that inequity is there. And it just continues on about basically looking at the sides, the good, the bad, and the things in between. There is nothing under the heavens that has not already existed. There is nothing that can be created because it is all already here. When we know that we can lean upon the source, the God of all things,
Yes.
then everything flows together in perfect harmony. It's us that gets stuck in our stories, in our grief, and in our pain that separates us from understanding.
And I think also when we do get separated in our grief from that, it's so important to go back to God, to talk to him. He's the very best friend you could ever have. Like he made you, he formed you, and he knows your life before you were born. Like everything you do is not a surprise to him. And so he wants you to be close to him. He wants you to talk to him. Like he is our father. He I mean, sometimes he's gonna reprimand us, sure. But
What good
at the end
father
of the day,
wouldn't?
you know, he wants us to be with him. To he wants us to come to him. You're having a bad day? You're having a great day. And I think it's so important to make him a part of your everyday life. And it could be as simple as just you're doing the dishes. Hey God, blah 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 blah. Or and going back to the Greek thing, I know there were times when sometimes you're on the holiest form of worship can be you're on the floor crying and you just reach out to God and you are like, help me, I don't understand, but I know it's in your, this is for your will, um it's your will. And so while our human mind can't comprehend it, nothing surprises God. It surprises us. And maybe they're for the person that passed away, um, we don't know the intricacies of their story. And maybe they needed to go. Maybe God called him home for a reason that he needed him in heaven for whatever reason, him or her. And so I really, really, really love that Bible story too, because it really reinforces how, like I said, God, there's no surprise to God. And that every season that we go through and every single one of those instances that you mentioned, it shaped our life story and it shaped our relationship with God or whatever higher being that you believe in. Um, and ultimately, you're in his hand, you're under his wing, and he's going to protect you. Sure, you're gonna go through hard times and sad times, but it's gonna make you stronger, and it's going to everything you go through is to honor him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. We do go through the suffering, but we can count it as a blessing. We can count it as a joy, because wasn't it Christ who first was persecuted and went through what it was done? And in that separation, that is what brings us the peace that surpasses all understanding, that gives us the ability to have the things that we need to have, for us to be able to understand that we don't have to lean upon our own understanding, because we know that there is a good God that does oversee all things. And when the good God oversees all things, then what are we really lacking? We lack nothing except when we get stuck in our thoughts. Abundance is our birthright. When we stand in that, regardless of the pain stories of what we're going through, when we're seeing the loss, when we're seeing the pain, when things don't work out the way that we thought that they should, that is a human construct that goes on the inside. And when we understand that these things are so much bigger and so much more than what we personally can conceive, then we can then separate ourselves from that pain and allow us to actually begin to understand and love the situation and forgive those situations that hurt so deeply.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that so much, and I fully agree with that. I also think that too, that just as much as there is a good God, and there are angels. I mean, there's also demons. There's also those that are trying. It's a spiritual warfare ultimately, and so in some ways, your bad days could just be the devil trying to get to you. And that's when, I mean, sometimes you just have to say, like, you're not going to win. I'm really sad right now, but you're not going to win the war. You might have won the battle, but you're not going to win the war.
Right. Well, in the end, the light wins.
Exactly, 100%.
So
Yeah.
no matter what the story is today, in the end, the light wins. So no matter how much, if we look at the stories itself, it says that Satan himself was casted out of the heavens and into the earth, right? And then we're sitting here, and now we're in a realm of education that has the influences, the principalities that come against, that keep us separated. So if we think about who we are from the foundations of creation, we're whole and complete. Being whole and complete, we come into this being birthed into the earth whole and complete. But because we come into the earth has those entities and different things, the demons and all of the different stuff. What it is, the heaven and hell. Let's really look at it from what it is, from an internal psychological level. Let's look at that for just a moment. You have heaven and hell. Heaven upstairs, hell below. What is that? Let's look at our emotional grid. We've got the hate at the bottom. We've got love at the top. So if we're looking at the emotional level, so when we're dealing with any emotion on this entire thing, we're dealing with the levels of heaven and hell. When we're going through in our mind the torment from the pain and the suffering and the hardships, we're living that hell. That's where the influences of the world that are living in the darkness can come and influence us and cause us to go through more circumstance. But when we understand that we got to come back up the spiral of emotion and get back to the good things and the goodness that is meant for us, when we can come to the heaven on earth. Heaven is a kingdom and it lives within. So is hell. No matter what we're dealing with, when we're getting stuck in the emotional realms of everything that's going on, the realms are actually within our mind. It's what we are entertaining. If the power of life and death live on the tip of our tongue, what are we saying to ourselves? So when we are grieving,
I mean, there's power in your tongue. Like when they say that in the Bible, and it is constantly true. You can build others up, you can tear them down. Everything you say literally has power to, even to yourself too. Like, I am strong, I am able, I'm good, or are you, I'm bad, I'm miserable, I'm like, and then your mind follows what your tongue says. And so that's why it is so important to speak good things, especially in the midst of the battle that you're facing when you're sad, depressed, angry, scared, whatever the case may be. Because that's really when it is so important to say, you know what, I might be going through this right now, but it's not who I am. I am a child of God. I am, like I said, I'm powerful, I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm whatever the case may be. And so, and sometimes that helps to end, or at least lessen, the battles that go on in your mind.
Well, we don't wrestle against, flesh and bone. We wrestle against principalities. And those principalities
Like,
are
yeah,
what we're wrestling against. So, anyone out there right now that seems like they're under the spiritual attack or they feel like the devil is heavy in their world, it's time to rise up and step up into the armor that you actually have. Set your mind with the helmet
put
is
on
out,
the armor of God.
you've got to be able to put the belt of truth upon yourself so that you're speaking in your true authenticity. Put on your gospel of peace, which is your shoes shod with the gospel of peace, which you're going out and giving out the messages of joy, love, and peace to one another. When we do all of those things, we can guard ourselves up with a shield of faith. And anytime we need it, the word of God is actually our sword. Our sword, when we know the truth of who we are, can actually tear down anything that is making us feel separate from who we truly are.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with that. You couldn't have said it better.
And I really want everybody out there, we got into this subject today because, myself personally in June, I lost a family member and it was really overwhelming because there was a lot of story behind it. A lot of times, if you are suffering because of grief in those pain places, sometimes there's a story, and that story has you hung up. It's okay to go find somebody to begin untangling that woven space within that keeps you ensnared in that story. It's okay to find your way to victory.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, did you have any final words for anyone listening to your podcast today?
Thank you so much for having me on this podcast, and that I hope that our discussion today at least helped even just one person. Then I think that will be such a blessing, because we're all going through things that we may or may not want to even talk about. But for those that are willing to say something, then it can provide a source of comfort and, oh, I'm not alone in this matter. Because most people, while they feel alone, they are not alone. And it's just having the courage to be able to reach out and say, hey, I need help. And so I hope that our talk today helped any of those that are out there listening, to encourage you to reach out to those that you might need to. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Jacquelyn, and everyone. Until next time, bye for now.